Hi everyone, welcome to GMO's channel. In this video, we'll discuss a model game against the Evans Gambit. This game was played by Caruana against Nisipiano. From Black's perspective, he showed a very good plan to handle the Evans Gambit. Let's get started. So, after e4, e5 and the regular bishop c4, bishop c5 and the Italian, when white starts with b4, this is the starting point of the Evans Gambit. This line can get quite tricky for black players if they don't know how to handle this. Now, bishop takes b4, a natural move. And when I was searching through the databases, I still found several games that were played in 1800s, and I could even see like thousands and thousands of games that white players played. More or less, this was like the main line those days. Now, c3, the whole point of sacrificing that pawn on b4 is to gain a few tempos like this. Basically, he has to gain these tempos so that he can prove his compensation. With c3, white can also like prepare for queen b3 at the right time and basically targeting the f7 pawn. Now, there are two reasonable lines in this position for black. One is bishop a5, a natural retreat, and the other one is bishop e7. Both the moves are quite reasonable for black players. But I think Caruana went with bishop a5, and here white has a few options. White players can go out with d4 directly in this point. Short castle is one option, but the main line, I think the third line is queen b3, but among these options, d4 remains as the main. Now, one question is, what exactly happens if white starts with queen b3 immediately, attacking the f7 pawn? There is a nice model game that was played by Aronian against Jobava, which is an excellent game. We'll briefly look at this. Queen e7, d4, like basically black has defended the f7 pawn, and white is trying to prove his compensation, so immediately striking in the center. And at this point, we will see a beautiful idea from black. He takes the pawn on e5, not fearing bishop takes f7, king e7 position. I mean, in general, the idea is, okay, we don't want to get into this kind of mess. We don't want to keep the king in the middle of the board. We generally want to keep our king's pawn structure safe, and we want to castle the king. But here, after this king e7 move, black develops very dangerous initiative, which is quite unpleasant for white to handle. As we see the game, you will understand like black generates tremendous counter chances after this. And I would leave this to the viewers to see the remaining of the game. But do see this game, you'll get a lot of insights. So I think with that queen b3 line, more or less, that game shows us clear ways to handle from black's perspective. And with d4, now the correct way to handle is d6. And if white wishes to take on e5, I think this position pretty easily black equalizes after something like this. And if white takes the pawn on e5, he recovers the pawn back. But I think with simple bishop e6, and I think we should be able to neutralize the pressure, and white doesn't have any clear advantage there. Black has equalized, and the danger has passed. Basically, the position is whatever remains is just pretty easy to handle from black's side. Now, queen b3 is the main. And this was played by Nisipiano against Caruana. Now, attacking the f7 pawn, a direct threat. Here is an important move that you guys should remember from black. Here, the strongest move for black is to go with queen d7, defending the f7 pawn. Now, at the same time, it covers the a4 e8 diagonal. One of the, for example, a natural reaction at this point is queen e7. The logic is queen d7 blocks the bishop's path, and in general we don't feel like doing that, and queen e7 looks like a more natural move. Why not queen e7? But the problem here is d5, and if the knight moves elsewhere, queen a4 will win the bishop. And one of the games that continued in this position went with knight d4, and this is an old game that I found played by Paul Murphy almost like 150 years ago, and that continued with bishop b5, I mean, obviously knight takes, queen takes, wins the bishop on a5. So c6. The game became messy, but again, white pretty much handled it very well and went on to win the game. After this, white's initiative is quite strong, so definitely see this game as well. So this was played by Murphy against Ayers, Alabama, 1855. So please check this game as well. And after queen d7. Now, obviously, black doesn't need to fear this d5, queen b5, queen a4 threats. Bishop b5 always is met with c6. White continued with e takes d4, I mean d takes e5, and here bishop b6 is final important move, probably the most important idea in this position that black players should remember. The threat is black is basically preparing for knight a5. If black achieves that, he wins the c4 bishop. Without the c4 bishop, I think basically the line is pretty safe for black. Black has nothing to worry because there is no pressure in the light squares, and black will be able to complete his development without much difficulties and can achieve a pretty easy position after that. White continued with a4, and this was a game that continued. This happened in Nakamura versus Anand, and after this, few natural moves. Knight e7, and at this point Nakamura took the pawn on d6, ed6, cd6, and the game continued, though that game eventually ended in a draw. Here white tried to improve upon that game and played bishop a3, and basically again more or less black completed his development without much difficulties. But one point is, it feels like white wins a pawn on d6. There is some pressure on the d6 pawn, but black just simply gave away the d6 pawn at this point, and we reach a position like this. I think this is move number 18. White has come out with an extra pawn, so it feels like white's opening can be a success, but the reality is exactly the opposite. Apparently black is doing very well in this position in spite of black being a pawn down, mainly thanks to the bishop pair that he has, and the position is open, the bishops are quite active, and at the same time black's pieces are coming out and black develops excellent initiative at this point. And from here onwards the game more or less ended in like another 10-12 moves. So these kind of positions are very comfortable for black in spite of being a pawn down, because there are several targets for the black pieces to attack. So more or less the game continued with some forcing moves at this point. Knight f1, rook d1, rook d1, and black recovered the pawn back. And I think at this point it's already clear that we can see black has got not only won the pawn back, at the same time he has created this outside pass pawn. Now one good news for white is he managed to get the bishop pair, but nevertheless the outside pass pawns are looking quite dangerous. Also, like, black pieces are quite active at this point. I think this is a moment where black has already got a fantastic advantage. Now the pawns are ready to march forward, and knight g3, g6, making sure there is no attack against the king. Knight f5 kind of ideas are stopped with g6, and knight e2, a5. Now white continued with knight d4. This is a very interesting moment in the game. In fact, I will leave at this point to the viewers to find out a forcing winning line for black. Like the idea that Caruana continued with, I mean, he went on to win the game in like another 3-4 moves. Like, it's just a easy winning line once you find the correct idea. So the viewers can find the correct winning plan for black at this point and let me know in the comments, and I'll definitely talk to you guys about that. We can keep it as an interactive session. So I think the whole game, I mean, whether you find the winner from here or not, it doesn't matter. The opening has been quite successful from black's perspective, if you guys remember this correct plan. So once again, to conclude this, bishop a5 followed by d6 and queen d7 to defend the f7 pawn is the critical idea. And when white takes on d5, bishop b6 with the plan of knight a5, knight to c4. I think if black players remember this key idea, I think the line is pretty much over. So I think Defense Gambit black players should get a clear idea about how to handle this, and think we can wind up with this, and I'll see you all in another video then.